This is your city. This is your city wants to know. We want to know the background, the heartbeat of what makes up our beautiful cities. We dig into the backstories, from the struggles to the successes of our local entrepreneurs, small business owners, artists, not-for-profit organizations, and the many, many people who make up the intricate tapestry of our communities. Real people, real stories, by you and for you. But wait, that's not it. I love giving my opinion. Just ask anyone who knows me. We can't get enough of the honest, gritty feedback of places that we spend our hard-earned money. I'll give you the good, the bad, and the ugly of the places I eat, sleep, and visit. Disclaimer, my opinion only. All right, so come on, let's get to it. Hello and good morning, everyone. Thank you for tuning in once again to This Is Your City. I have an amazing guest today. I want to get right to it because there's so much to unpack. So much to unpack. You guys know how I am so pro-woman and strong women and women in business and making a difference in the world. And my guest today, she's up there at the top of the charts and she's continuing to soar. There's no end in sight for what she's capable of doing and what she's done and how she can teach us. My guest today is Lori Nickel, and she is the CEO of Second Harvest. And we're going to have her talk to us a little bit and explain to us about Second Harvest. I'm not one to bore people with stats because I love stats and I love things like that, but I really am going to get into some stats during this interview because I think it's going to blow your mind when she tells you some of these stats in Canada about food waste. Okay, we know that there's an apparent food shortage going on right now, and you've heard me go on rants about this. And when I kind of learned about Lori and what she does, I was angry. I was angry,
but not at me.
Not at you. But this apparent food shortage and then what you do, I'm just like, wow, okay. So Lori, welcome to the show. Thank you so much for being here today. You're an extremely busy woman, but you took the time for us. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm happy to be here. I'm fantastic. Fantastic.
Both of us had a tiny bit of technical difficulties this morning, but we're past that.
It's over.
We're done with that. Lori, Second Harvest. Let's get into it. Tell our guest, what is Second Harvest?
Second Harvest is a really cool charity. So we are Canada's largest food rescue organization. And what that means is we rescue surplus food from right across the supply chain, from the farm all the way to the retail or a hotel or restaurant, everywhere in between. And we redirect that great food, healthy food, to charities and nonprofits across Canada. So primarily our work is food rescue, but we also do training and education. So we make sure that charities and nonprofits can be food safe certified to ensure that they're managing cold chain properly. We do food waste audits. We also do research because we really need to understand if we have a problem, what's the depth of the problem so that we can create change and real change. And we also do a fair bit of advocacy. As I was saying to you earlier, I was just talking to an MP before this call to say, okay, we've got a problem in Canada. We've got a food waste problem. We've also got really the highest numbers of food insecurity this country has ever seen. And we need to put back some of those supports that we had taken away because we thought COVID was over. Well, COVID isn't over, but whatever. There's still so many Canadians that just can't access their basic needs. And these are Canadians that have jobs. These are not people that you're thinking about typically. So we're really looking at systems change. And I say this often, my goal as a CEO of any charity, or the goal of any executive at a charity, should be to go out of business. We've got a problem. What's the solution? Let's figure out what the solution is, work towards the solution, and then close the business. And then there'll be another problem. We can go deal with that. Yeah, so
there'll always be.
There will always, unfortunately, be a problem.
And I like what you just said, that the food insecurity is not just, sometimes when we think of people who don't have enough food to eat, we think of like the homeless or, but there's working poor. There is more working poor in this country than ever before.
Exactly.
They work hard. They work long hours and still have to decide, which is such an atrocity in this country, between paying bills and feeding their family.
Exactly.
Right.
Yep.
And it's perishable food that you're talking about here, right?
So at Second Harvest, we're very unique in that we work with perishable food and we focus on produce, protein, and dairy. And those are the hardest foods to access when you're low income because they're very expensive.
Yeah.
And when you're on a very fixed budget, you don't take risks with your food, right? So if you have kids, I was a low income single parent, you're like, I'm not going to buy broccoli because I don't know if they're going to eat it, or only one of my children like it, so I'm not going to buy it because it's a risk. And so you end up, and I've seen this time and time again, where you're just not getting the healthy food, or you're getting one, like peas maybe, but that's it, and only peas. So you're only getting the nutrients out of that one type of food that is really important. And protein is really important, like whether it's meat or vegetarian, is critical for mental health development, physical health development, educational outcomes. And so if we don't deal with it at the beginning of a child's life, getting them the right nutrients, then we definitely deal with it during the middle. We definitely deal with it with education and health. And so it's really just preventative medicine to just get the right foods to people.
And I have to say this carefully to make it sound sensitive, because we all know this, right? We all know we need to eat healthy. Education is important. Why do we eat healthy? How does, each generation we have to educate, because each generation coming up, that's what we have to do. And people know that we have to eat healthy, but it's not always a good choice. It's not always a choice. You can go buy 3 bags of potato chips for $4,
Exactly.
but you can't buy any asparagus for under $7.99. So
and lettuce is $4.99 right now, ahead of lettuce.
Exactly. So it's kind of protein. You can't go buy good chicken that isn't full of poison, but you can go buy 5 bags of pasta. So yes, that's good, but you still need good protein. You still need healthy food. And when I said a second ago that I was so upset because this food shortage that this country is in, if we've only seen the waste that this country does corporate companies, the waste of food, and then they have the gall to say that we're having a food shortage. And then I come across you and I was like, oh, like, this is what we need to hear. This is what we need to see. And you mentioned a few companies now, or organizations, larger organizations. Can I ask you about cruises? Do you guys do anything about that food waste?
No, we really don't. I think we have once we've gotten a call from a cruise ship in British Columbia, and we did manage that, but it's not typically, to be fair.
No,
and sure, there's but it's not just cruise ships. Agreed. I mean, cruise ships, for many reasons, I think don't need to exist at all, period. Like, save yourself the money and don't go on a cruise ship.
I agree.
But when you're looking just up the supply chain, right? Like manufacturers, processors, we waste 58% of all the food that's produced for Canadians, which is more than we eat. And
58%, folks. I want you to hear what she said. We waste 58%. Like, just let that sink in for a second. I'm so sorry to interrupt you, Lori, but those numbers, I think we have to hear. We can't just like, oh, okay, and let it go. We can't.
No, we can't. We really can't, because what's happening is most of this food is ending up in landfill, and it's creating methane gas, which is a direct contributor to the climate crisis. And Canada is warming up at a higher rate than any other region in the world. And I don't think we realize that as Canadians. Like, we have the worst reputation for food waste globally, us, and we are getting hotter than any other region in the world. That isn't making people
notice. Stand up and say why, right? I don't know.
Right. And I mean, like, we're long past the conversations of, is climate change real? Of course it's real. I mean, honest to gosh, we see the fires, we see the floods, we saw which is the devastation on the East Coast. We know that it's real. So that's not a conversation we can have anymore, and I refuse to have it. So how are we managing? And I think also people don't, you don't think food waste and automatically go climate change, but the amount of food that's wasted globally contributes about 10%, between 8 and 10% of all GHGs. So it's also a really simple fix, right? When you're thinking oil and gas, it's a lot more complicated, but when you're thinking food waste, like, no producer grows food to waste it. Nobody buys food to waste it. So I think there's just we don't understand it. And it's a fairly new phenomenon too, right? Like World War II, we weren't wasting food. And then the globalization of food, we waste a lot of food. And it's global. Like
it is global. It is global. And I'm not saying there isn't a food shortage.
What there is there's supply chain challenges. And so there's not a global food, well, that's not fair. In developing countries, there's absolutely significant food shortages. And there's also
100%.
significant food waste, to be fair. And that's because of a lack of infrastructure. So there's different reasons for it. But what we find is that there are food shortages in different commodities at different times. So it's not like it's a whole food shortage and we don't have enough food in Canada. It's like we are not getting certain commodities. And for a myriad of reasons, but the truth is we're so spoiled here, right? Like we can have strawberries in the winter, we can have raspberries, we don't eat seasonally at all anymore. I mean, not everybody, but and that's not as an individual, that's not my fault. Like it's not like I chose to do that. I grew up in a system that was, I assumed that strawberries were available so I could have them. When in fact, when we look deeper in the food system, maybe we should start eating locally and you'll see your food choices will be very different.
And people say, yeah, you can eat locally. I'd like to eat locally, but I just can't afford to eat locally. And there's like, we could go down this road of all of these things that people say, which are true and why.
Or not true. I don't know that that's true, to be honest.
Well,
you might not get everything you want locally.
Exactly. I agree. And lately I've been noticing for myself personally, I went on this rant and about this bag of apples that I had, and I wasted the bag of apples, Lori. I wasted the bag of apples. We bought a bag. I cut one in half, got distracted, forgot about it, left it there, came back, went, it's not even a spot of brown. Like I remember making salads with apples and stuff, and you'd have to pour lemon juice on it.
Yeah, exactly.
Not go bad. I left it there, and then I'm like, well, that's odd. I cut it in another, so into fours, came back. Now I got a science project on my hands. 72 hours, I left that apple on my counter. Cut. Nothing happened. Didn't go brown. Left the bag out on my counter for over a month. Nothing. Still rock hard. Not one brown spot except on one apple. I couldn't eat the apples, Lori. I was so nervous about eating those apples that would not go bad after a month. I couldn't.
Yeah, except for you bought them in Canada. I would say eat the apples. To be fair, like one of the things that is great about Canada is we have like the safest food in the world as well. So our CFIA is very diligent about it. So if they've put something, I'm not sure what was going on with your apples, to be fair, but it's not something that would have happened in a vacuum. Like if there's some kind of coating that they put on it to keep it longer, then that would have been tested repeatedly before it was ever approved in Canada, because we are very hardcore about our food safety. So I know it's weird. I've not heard, to be fair, I've not heard that. But I also know that our food is incredibly safe here, so I would have eaten them. Or else I would have called the place and said, what's going on? Like, or Googled it. Like, what's going on?
I was posting it on Facebook saying, okay, now I'm doing a self-science project for you guys to see these apples.
But did you call the manufacturer?
I didn't.
Well, why not?
I don't know. I'm usually that person who would. I don't know why I didn't think about it.
Because now I'm interested. So just send me the name of the name of the manufacturer. That's interesting. That's great, actually. If we can get an apple that is done and it's done naturally, like it, without a chemical compound, like, and it very well maybe, that would be awesome, because that's the challenge with apples, right? Like, is that they do go brown, and so we all put lemon juice on them, or 7-Up, I've heard too, to be fair.
Never heard that. That's cool. But I like that you started in numbers. I was going to wait to get into that, but let's do it. Okay. And I want to also let my audience know that we're talking right now. We're going to talk about Canada. Yes, we're going to talk globally, but this is Canada, and you had said something about 60% of food produced in Canada.
No, for Canadians. So that includes imports too.
Okay. And I also read somewhere that it was like 35 million tons that are lost and wasted annually.
Yeah.
Is that
so? That's correct. Sorry, I'm just going to grab this, and I would recommend everybody read The Avoidable Crisis of Food Waste. We have the technical report, but I like a good easy roadmap.
Here, let me write that down so I can put that in the excuse me.
If you just go to the Second Harvest research, all of our research is there, so you'll see that. But basically what we did is we looked across the supply chain to better understand, what was interesting to me was when I was working, I'm like, okay, so how much of food is wasted? And I just assumed that somebody had done the research. I think we all make a lot of assumptions that way, that somebody's done something. And to find out that it hadn't been, we're all using some kind of old data. You okay?
Yeah.
Oh, it's okay. You're choking.
I swallowed air.
Oh, it happens.
I swallowed air. All right. Sorry about that.
No, don't be. So this takes us on the life of a tomato. Like if I'm produced and then what happens to me and how waste can happen. So we can understand this is why.
Okay. I
So
like that.
58% of all the food produced for Canadians is lost or wasted. Now, not all of that is edible, right? So there's bones inside of that and some pieces of food that is not edible.
Right.
Of the edible, it's about 11.2 million metric tons. It's enough food to feed every Canadian for free for 5 months.
What? Say that again. It's enough to feed every Canadian for free for
5 months. Yeah, 5 months. So, there's a real dichotomy in this country and others where we have more than enough food to feed everybody. And yet there's so many people that are food insecure.
Wow.
And that was another piece of research that we did. So I moved my computer, so everything's gone over there.
That's okay.
I think this is another one. It's called Canada's Invisible Food Network. And it's another one because I was a low-income single parent and I'm familiar with what it's like to be food insecure with children, and it's terrifying and scary. And I never went to a food bank. And so every time everybody says, where are people getting food? Everybody says food bank. And I'm like, but I never did. And everybody I know never did. And we all had food insecurity. So we mapped out every place in Canada that people can access food and are accessing food. And we learned that there's 61,000 places that are nonprofits or charities that are giving out food to Canadians at low or no cost, mostly no cost, to be fair. And there are 4,500 food banks in the food bank network. So that's why we call it Canada's Invisible Food Network, because everywhere you go, it's existing, right? For every grocery store, there are 4 nonprofits that are giving out food. One grocery store to 4 nonprofits giving out food. So it's a big, big, big system across this country. That's unfortunate, right? Like,
wow.
Yeah. So those are my big scary numbers. And then the third piece of research we did was really to understand, so how much of this food, we know that 58% is wasted, and we know there's 11 million that could be donated. So let's go to the industry and find out how much is actually being donated versus how much could be donated. And we learned there's a great opportunity available because only 4% is actually being donated of all of it. And not that everybody has stuff to donate. I would say primarily they do. Anybody working in food, there's always something, but for some reasons, maybe they can't. These are the people that have said, yes, we have it. 4% are donating it to, not just to Second Harvest, just donating it, period. Like
that's really low, and that's really hurts my heart.
It's sad, but I think there's a lot of education that's required. We have liability. People think there's liability. There's no liability. We have food donation acts in every province and territory. So if anybody was to get sued, and nobody has, to be fair, ever in the history of Canada, everybody's protected. So I think there's work that needs to be done there to make sure that we are moving that food. It's not going in the landfill, creating greenhouse gases, and it's getting to human beings.
Yeah. A while back, I watched this documentary, and not to mention names, but I'll mention names. I think it was Walmart, and the staggering amount of food that is wasted through Walmart alone. And it just showed all of the warehouses in the background that we don't see for food going to the landfills. And I think that sparked me when I saw that documentary a few years ago. That was really what sparked my, like, this can't be, there's got to be something we can do. Why do they throw out so much food? And there's so much red tape. Like, I asked somebody who owned a Tim Hortons once, that changed a little bit for the better, but this was, why do you throw away so much food when there are so many places in this city alone that can use this? And it's government that doesn't allow it. It's not.
That's not true. It's not true.
Well, that's what he told me. So
I know, but he was uneducated, because that's never been the case. So that's what I hear a lot. And I'm like, I want to believe that people just don't know better. I feel like it's a really easy way out, because it's not true. Government totally supports donation. They give us money to move product. So that's not true. That's not true. And also, I'm just going to go back to the Walmart. So what's interesting about Walmart is actually they're very invested in food waste and have been for years, and eradicating it. So I'm not going to preach about
this was a while back too, so.
But they've been really good about investing in food waste, and I would say they're kind of ahead. What food waste is, where it gets challenging is individuals. What they do is as consumers, we sometimes load up our cart with stuff. So if we're loading up our cart and then we leave our cart, so if there's any kind of chicken or meat product, they have to throw that away because they don't know how long it's been there, and because it can
Wow.
get pathogens on it. And so, is that Walmart's fault?
No.
That's not. I'm saying that's the only stuff that they throw away because it's not true.
Right.
But they are, like, honestly, I'm really impressed with what's happening in the world of retail. There's a lot further to go, but there's nobody saying no, we're not doing it for those kind of reasons, like
Love that.
government says or whatever. That doesn't
Yeah.
exist. Everybody's trying. I think part of the challenge is with the bigger conglomerations. I think the monopolization of food is, it's just hard when things are huge, right? There's a lot of bureaucracy.
If everybody's trying, why is it such a staggering amount?
Because we're not measuring it. I think it's that simple. So if we had at a federal level that said, I mean, we made a commitment to the United Nations in 2015 that we would halve food waste by 2030, because we all know that 2030 is that number where we're going to hit 1.5 degrees and we can't go back from that. And we're nowhere near getting to that. We're in 2022, almost 2023. We're not measuring it.
Right.
So how are you going to halve it if you don't even know what it is? So if we got government to mandate measurement, you have to tell all industry, you have to measure, you have to set targets, you have to hit those targets, but we're going to help you. We're going to provide you the tools. We're going to provide you the resources. I mean, for most of Canada's small and mid-sized businesses, so maybe the bigger guys don't get it.
Right.
But then there's going to be consequences. Like, you have to hit those targets. Because we haven't done that, which is, it's complicated when you're in the business, to be fair. It's like nothing is super easy.
Yeah.
But if you do that, and we did have 15 years and now we're down to 7, then you will actually see a change because you're forced to see the change. There will be consequences if you do not measure this. That part to me is pretty simple.
Yeah. And let's do one more number before we move on, though. Do you have a approximate cost, financial value to the waste that's happening in this country?
I do. Do I remember it off the top of my head, though? I don't. It's billions. I want to say 11 billion. It's, you know what, this is what I do remember. It's 3% of the GDP. But I can't remember the exact number. Billions. It's equivalent to 3% of the GDP, though.
Wow. So billions of dollars.
Billions. Oh yeah, billions and billions of dollars. That's terrible. I should know that off the top of my head. I'm so sorry. I'm looking through the book going, I know it's here somewhere, but I haven't looked at it.
No.
48 billion. It's a ridiculous number.
48 billion.
No, but I might be making that up, to be fair. So, like, let's just cross that out because I cannot remember.
Well,
it's a lot.
You have said in your own words, and you kind of, I want to go backwards just for a second because I want to know a lot about you as well. But you do have a saying, I think, that I read about you, which I love. No waste, no hunger, or that's your vision.
Yep. The vision of no waste, no hunger.
No waste, no hunger. And you just said, you know, how many people go and fill up their grocery carts and then leave things, and I've seen people do it. Like you said, maybe it's chicken or something, and they'll be like, you know, I don't want this. And they'll put it on a shelf instead of going back to put it in the fridge, right? Like, I've went and put it back. I
always put it back. Yeah, exactly.
Always. But I've seen people not put it back. And so that might seem really insignificant to a lot of people. You know, if we're talking billions of dollars, you know, my chicken's not going to, but if everybody had that mentality, you know, then it's just going to get worse. So we have to start with our own self. We can only control ourselves. We can't control anybody else. So start with you. Put your chicken back, right?
Yeah, and because I actually don't think they realize that they're going to throw it away. They would just think someone's going to put it back, but you can't, because you don't know how long it's been sitting out there, and there are pathogens that will enter that chicken if it's at room temperature long enough. And so for everybody's public health, we have to get rid of that, right?
I wouldn't know. I wouldn't have known. I wouldn't have even thought about it. Thank you for educating me. You've already, in this short little podcast that we've done, you've educated me 3 times, and I'm like, yes, you know, I'm not that prideful to be. I don't want to be dumb. I like to be knowledgeable, and so that I can start with me, right? So it's not small. It might seem insignificant, but it's not, because if every 38 million people in this country had the same mentality, man, can you imagine? So we just got to start with us, and small things like that.
Agreed. But also when you're shopping, you know, don't buy 2 for 1. Okay, so I did just look that up. It's $49.64 billion, so it's almost $50 billion. of food that we waste.
Financial waste.
Yeah. And that's in the household too. So, I mean, I always recommend to people, buy less. You'll save yourself some money. You're going to end up throwing it away anyway. And a lot of people, we always want to bring a list, and some people do, and good for them. But most people don't. They think they know, and then they see something, and the grocery store is the best lobbying place of all, right? Like they market things at a certain height because they want to catch your eye and they want you to grab it. And they're like, a 2-for-1 it's not a 2-for-1 if you're throwing one away, right? If you're buying bulk and you're not using it, and every time you go shopping, if you have to go and clean out your fridge, there's a problem, which, to be fair, like, it happens, right? So I just find that, and I, this is what I do for a living, but it took me a while to just start, okay, I'm just buying less. And I swear to God, I've saved so much money. And, my husband sometimes looks and he goes like, there's nothing to eat here. And I got to be honest. I'm like, yeah, there's not junk food. There's food to eat. There's
Exactly.
So if you think about it that way, just buy less, because you're going to go out one night, or you're going to, order in one night, or whatever. Something's always going to happen. Buy less. And it's not, and I'm like, and I know, being like low income, you got one shot, right? Like, you're going weekly because you can't afford to go transit or whatever. You can't afford to go every day. So that, in a European country, I see that working well. I don't see it working well in Canada. You go once. And you shop the deals, and know when to shop the deals. That's always. And
you
also
can even use things like Flip, to go see where the sales are. Should you be able to go from place to place? Not everybody can. I understand that. But here's another thing. And my husband always tells me, like, have a goal when you go shopping, because I have been bad to buy things because it's been on sale.
Right. But there's no actual menu or recipe that you're putting together.
Right. And I waste it because I didn't have a goal for it.
Yep.
So, hey, if you're going to go buy those mushrooms, we all know that mushrooms don't last that long. Make sure you have a recipe in mind or a goal in mind for those mushrooms, not just because they're on sale, because you'll end up throwing them away.
Or don't, or else, whatever it is you're doing, just make mushroom gravy. That's it. It's really easy to make. Cut up some mushrooms and throw it on your steak. Cut up some mushrooms, throw it on anything. Throw it on your chicken. Throw it on. Mushrooms are actually so versatile. They go with everything. So
they do. Yeah.
Please don't throw mushrooms.
I say that because I just ended up throwing out some mushrooms that I froze because I didn't want to waste them. And then
they got all watery.
It was terrible. So
you throw them in a soup or in your spaghetti sauce, like.
Oh yeah, anything.
They're very versatile. That's the one thing I never actually have thrown away, because I can find something. But anyway, here's the other tip I would say, and you just said it: freeze everything. Freeze everything. Honest to God, like, if it's meat, freeze it. I only buy 50% off meat. That's it, because I can just throw it in the freezer, and food is very expensive now. Like,
especially meat. Oh my gosh. So that's what I do. I go to the sales, and so it's going to be expired in 2 days. You know what?
Expired? No, that's not true.
Fine.
No, there's no. Okay, there's another myth. There's only 5 foods that expire in Canada. Only 5, and they are not meat. They are baby formula. They are Ensure products, like Ensure for seniors. They are like protein bars if you're running a race, and it's all based on the nutrient complement of them. The other 2 are by prescription only. So those 3, those people that are eating those things, they need the nutrients. Everything else is a best before date, and it's arbitrary, and it's conservative. So
yes,
you got lots of time on food.
Yeah, best before. Only with meat can I tell you that I was ignorant. You just gave me another educational tip, because the expiry or the best before date, my husband used to work in a food plant, and he would say, Kim, no, it's just a suggestion when certain things may break down, not being bad for you, just maybe not have the same flavor or
exactly
the same, right? Like,
and they'll lose some of the nutrients. Absolutely.
Right. But it's not going to make you sick. So
no, but
on meat,
nobody wants to get sick. So just throw it in the freezer. Nobody advocates for anybody to eat poisonous food because it's gone bad. Don't. Just know how to manage and store your food properly.
Yeah, but the meat one, if it says best before date and it's like 2 days away, it's on sale, it's not bad. Put it in the freezer. It's fine. So that's another educational tip. I'm glad we're doing this. But
it's fun.
You had said you were raising a single mom, you said, right?
Yep.
And you said you were having to, not food insecurity. Did you say?
Oh yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So, and that was kind of what sparked, you volunteered at your son's school, I read somewhere, and that's what sparked your passion in this.
It did.
Bring us to that. And I'm getting somewhere with that because I really want people to hear your story.
So when I've been living independently since I've been 15. And you can imagine, like, I'm probably not the greatest household growing up in it. And I got married, well, whatever, living in common law when I was 18. Had my first son when I was 21, second 23, third 26. And then my husband went away at 28. And so I was suddenly single with 3 young children. And I was a bartender, I was a waitress. So I made decent money. But then, I had to take care of these 3 kids. There's no daycare. Like, hey, who can afford daycare? So and I was working nights. So it was very scary, terrifying. But they were all in school at that point. So I ran the child nutrition program. The principal asked me to build basically a small business. And that's what I did. I started feeding kids 365 days. And it was, I think, 360 kids, to be honest, every day. And it had to be, it had to be 3 food groups, healthy. I had to get staff, which really are volunteers. I had to find money to buy all the food because there was no money. So it was really entrepreneurial, building this small business to feed these kids every day. And what made me passionate was, I loved it because we all had food and I never had to worry about my kids having food because there was food and there was always extra food. And then the volunteers would take some home. So I was
Right.
like, now I can worry about my rent. My rent is paid. I'm not worried about the food as much.
Right.
We're going to be better. And I loved it. And what I loved most about it was the women, right? There was all women and it was different days, different volunteers, and it was women with different backgrounds. So there was the ESL women, like different countries they were coming from. There were women that were like in very abusive situations, very like would break your heart abusive situations, and they were allowed to volunteer. They were agoraphobic. And what this great thing did was it brought these women together, including me, and we all kind of got lost, right? Before, and then we came together and we remembered, oh yeah, we're pretty awesome. And we, built each other up and we got confidence and we felt good about ourselves. And I'm so proud because some of the women left really abusive relationships, which was, scary. And they'd been in them for years and years and years, or they got full-time employment because then they had these skills that they could take on. And but again, to me, it comes back to just having a sense of self and having confidence in yourself.
Yeah.
And for me too. So it built us up to a place that we had so lost ourselves in. And so, yeah, I'm pretty passionate about women and empowering women and making sure everybody has access to the food they need to be healthy and to thrive. And so, yeah, I've just been doing this my whole life now. I didn't think it was not a career goal at all. It's the way it all played out.
I read you had said something and it really struck in my heart because I too grew up in situations, but many of us did, like,
yep.
It's not a cry story of mine, but food insecurity, we didn't call it that back then. We were poor and we were hungry.
Yep.
Right. And we had to go and depend on other people to leave boxes at our door of food or, stuff like that. And I read something that you said, you can't tell who's hungry just by looking. When you were volunteering, because that's where it started for you, I believe, this passion of food and food waste, and you can't tell who's hungry just by looking. And I was like, oh my gosh, it's so true.
Mm-hmm.
And this group of women, yourself, that grew into a passion. And you have come so far from a single mother of 3 and, many things in between, because we all have life.
Yeah.
We all have stories and they're all true and real. But I just want, before we go, I want my listeners to know you a little bit better. And the reason I like my podcast to get behind the scenes, not just talk about Second Harvest, but talk about the story behind it, is because we all have a story, Lori, and it's never our ending, right? And I want people to know you came a single mom of 3 young kids. You saw this food waste. You volunteered at the school. You saw these really insightful things, but that you can't tell who's hungry by looking at them. You're with Second Harvest that is changing the way we see things in our country and the world. You're changing the world, believe it or not. Okay.
Oh, I believe it, but it's not me. It's everybody who's doing something, all the charities, all food industry, like we're all trying to fix a systems problem.
Yes, absolutely. And that's so humble of you to say, because that's what humble people do. They always put the spotlight on others around them too. And thank you for that. And I love women who do that. You see, that's why I have you on here. But here's some things about you that people I feel need to know. you were recognized by the United Nations, as Canada's food hero.
Yeah.
Okay.
That was
Almost
cool.
like want to put a cape on you, right? Like, you were recognized by United Nations in 2020, I think, as Canada's food hero. And this is monumental in a person's career, in your work, but it didn't stop there. And in 2021, you were named Canada's Woman of Influence. Oh my gosh, my heart beats fast. Like, Woman of Influence. I love it. So you're Canada's food hero, you're a woman of influence, but then you were also appointed the Order of Ontario. And these are stepping stones, right? Like, these are just, look where I was and look where I am and look where I'm going. And I have no plans on stopping.
No,
because you have a
because it's not about those awards. It's got nothing to do with awards.
Nothing to do with the awards. Those are just byproducts of your passion. And
Exactly.
I love that. I love that. And this is where I'm going with that. I'm loving it for young girls and women to hear your story. I'm loving it for anyone, not just young girls and women, anyone, but I just really have a strong passion for young girls and women to thrive in our world. But anyone really, this is a testament that if you have drive, if you have passion, you can pretty much accomplish anything you put your mind to, right? And just what you just did, and I want to say, stay humble. Did you see what Lori just did? She passed the buck, if you will, when I was trying to give her accolades. She's like, it wasn't all about me. I mean, I had a team of people. And that's so true. We can never do any of this on our own, but stay humble, stay positive,
keep positive.
Your integrity. Keep your integrity, and great things are available to you. And Lori, I'm so grateful and I'm so thankful and humbled that you gave us your time. But before we go, I want to ask you two things. Let's touch two things. First thing is, what would you say to those listening who feel that they're only one person, they can't change the world?
Well, that's a fair. Only one person can change the world, but everybody doing one thing can change the world. So do the one thing.
Do the one thing. And, I want to add to that. I heard this not too long ago. You might not be able to change the world on a global scale, but you can change your world.
Exactly.
Right? Starts with you, starts with your home, and Lori educated us on a few things today that can help us start to change our world. And I just love that you said that you can do one thing.
Do one thing and start now. Don't wait. Start now. It's never too late.
Never too late. And then second of all, how you've educated us, thankfully. How or what can people do to help lessen our food waste? You've already given us some things, but to help with Second Harvest, like what can we do for Second Harvest?
Well, we're a charity, so we're always looking for donations. Go to the Second Harvest website, and absolutely, we will spend your money well. But on top of that, what I would love everybody to do is contact their local MP and say, you don't like food waste, and we like what Second Harvest is doing. Or what are you doing, government? We believe in measurement. So the big changes, the systemic changes, have to come from policy interventions. Policy interventions come when citizens like us elect our politicians and say, this isn't okay. We shouldn't be the country that's warming at the fastest. We shouldn't be embarrassed by being the country with the most waste. So,
oh my gosh,
call your MP, call your MPP, call your municipality, and bug them. That's what I like to do. Bug.
And I love that. And people who are listening and watching, rewind this when you and write it down what she just said. Rewind this and write it down and then listen to it again. And that's very good advice. And I'm so grateful to you, Lori. It's been an honor speaking with you today.
It's been fun. Come on. Stop honor. It's not an honor.
I find I really, who am I? I'm just Kim and I just have this podcast, and when people like yourself take the time to
what
speak.
A horrible thing. No, you just pull. Okay, stop that. Pull back. Don't say that I'm just Kim. That negates the wonderfulness that is Kim. And that's advice I give to all women. We got to stop doing that. I'm Kim. I'm awesome.
Yeah, I can't
empower if you're not empowering yourself.
Right.
You're awesome. We're awesome.
Thank you. But I am honored. I am honored that you took some time out of your day and you speak with us and you educate us. And I love what you do. And I really encourage all my listeners to go on the website, Second Harvest, and learn. Just educate ourselves. It's a new education. It's not like, yeah, we need to eat healthy. We all know that. This is a new education that we probably don't know a lot about.
Yep, and there's lots of resources too. So if you want to learn how to limit your own food waste, go to the website. You'll find it. There's lots of resources.
So
all right.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Keep us updated what's happening. If anything new comes along, let's talk about it. Let's put it out there.
All right.
Yeah, I just think that's great. And for my listeners, as I always say, like this, tweet this, download this, share this, send a pigeon, whatever it is you do, make sure you continue to listen to This Is Your City. And we will see you again. Stay safe and stay blessed. Ciao.